Hello everyone, and welcome to my Young and the Restless official 24 channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Lily stood at the edge of the Abbott estate balcony, her arms crossed as the wind swept through her curls, the same curls Kane used to brush behind her ears with the gentlest of touches. But now, everything had changed. The man she once loved with all her heart, trusted with her soul, and built a life with had transformed into someone she could no longer recognize. Their once sacred bond had eroded under the weight of betrayal, lies, and secrets too dark to ignore. Her heart had cracked too many times, and this time, she couldn't tape it back together. The final straw had been a cold discovery, Kane's involvement in a sinister cover-up with Carter, a secret that involved blood, violence, and a trail of threats. Even though Kane had pleaded innocence, Lily had seen the shadows in his eyes, the way his hands shook, the way he couldn't meet her gaze. She knew, in the depths of her spirit, that part of him had crossed a line he could never return from. And she couldn't stand beside a man so haunted by his own demons that he dragged her down with him. That evening, she left a handwritten note on their kitchen counter, her engagement ring beside it, and disappeared without a word. She thought it would be the end, a clean break. But she didn't realize it would trigger something inside Kane, something wild, broken, and dangerous. Kane's descent was as terrifying as it was tragic. When he returned home to find her gone, the silence screamed louder than any words ever could. He tore the house apart looking for clues, his fists slamming into walls as if he could punch the truth out of the air. The note she left burned in his palm like betrayal itself. He read it over and over, disbelieving every sentence. She said she loved him once, but she couldn't anymore. She said she needed space, safety, peace. And then she was gone. That night, Kane didn't sleep. He didn't eat. He sat in the living room with all the lights off, staring at the doorway as if willing her to return. But as days passed, something inside him snapped. His grief fermented into rage, and that rage twisted into obsession. He began watching old videos of them together, playing voice memos she had left him, whispering her name in the dark like a prayer. In his fractured mind, he became convinced Lily didn't leave because she didn't love him but because someone had manipulated her, poisoned her against him. He decided she was confused, misled, scared, and it was up to him to protect her from the world, from others, from herself. And so, he made a plan. Not to hurt her, no, never. But to bring her back. To fix what was broken. To take her somewhere quiet, far away, where she would finally understand that they were meant to be. Lily, now staying in a private guest house owned by a friend in Chicago, tried to rebuild herself quietly. She worked part-time at a publishing house under a different name, kept her phone off, avoided social media, and only contacted her children through secured emails routed through a trusted friend. She knew Kane was unstable, she'd seen glimpses of it even before she left, but she didn't anticipate the extent of his obsession. Weeks passed, and while she tried to convince herself she was safe, she couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Sometimes she'd spot a figure across the street. Sometimes her window would be open when she knew she'd locked it. And then one night, it happened. She had just stepped out of the shower when she felt the chill of someone else in the room. Before she could scream, a cloth covered her mouth, and everything went black. When she awoke, her wrists were tied with silk scarves, and she was inside a moving vehicle, the seats covered with blankets that smelled like home. Her vision blurred as she made out Kane's silhouette at the wheel, humming a song they used to dance to. Her voice broke as she cried out his name, and he turned to her with a smile not of comfort, but of a man who had finally gotten what he wanted. "Shush, baby. It's okay now. I've got you," Kane whispered, reaching over to stroke her cheek. "I'm bringing you home." "But this isn't home," Lily sobbed. "You kidnapped me." "No, I saved you," he insisted. "From the lies. From the pain. We just need time, you'll see." He took her to an isolated cabin deep in the Vermont woods, a place no one could find without directions. It had once been a romantic getaway they had dreamed of building together. Kane had made it real. He had prepared it for her arrival like a shrine. Photos of them lined the walls, her favorite books stacked by the fireplace, a wardrobe filled with her clothes, perfumes, and even her grandmother's quilt. The horror dawned on Lily as she realized he had planned this for weeks, maybe longer. And yet, in that broken space, She also saw how far gone he truly was. He fed her meals he cooked himself, read to her at night, spoke to her like they were still married. And every time she tried to reason with him, begged to go home, he would grow cold, his eyes narrowing. "Don't say that. This is your home. I'm your husband," Kane would say, his tone darkening. "We just need to find our rhythm again." Days turned to weeks. Lily kept track by marking a tally behind a loose brick in the fireplace. She never stopped planning. She feigned compliance, even laughed at his jokes. She began asking him about the outside world, sowing seeds of doubt. "Don't you miss the kids?" she'd ask. "They are safer without interference," Kane would reply. "They'll understand soon." But eventually, cracks formed in his delusion. When he caught Lily trying to sneak a note outside in a firewood basket, he flew into a fury not violent, but unhinged. He locked her in the basement for a day, then returned weeping, apologizing, holding her like a lost child. That night, he confessed to her everything about Carter's death, about his role in hiding the evidence, about his belief that she would leave him forever if the truth came out. "I did it all for you, Lil," he whispered, tears soaking her hair. "Everything I ever did was to protect us. I thought losing you would kill me." She listened, calm and quiet, holding him as he cried. But deep inside, she was done being his hostage in every sense. That night, while he slept beside her, she pried open the drawer where he kept the keys and retrieved her phone from a hidden safe he thought she didn't know about. With shaking fingers, she typed out a single message and location ping. "Help me. Kane has me. Don't tell anyone. Come alone. Please." She sent it to Nate, her cousin, her confidant, someone who would know what to do. Then she waited, pretending nothing had changed. When Nate arrived 3 days later, disguised as a forest ranger, Lily had to mask her shock at how thin and wild he looked. She ran into his arms the moment she could, and Nate, careful not to escalate Kane, pretended to be a passerby. But Kane sensed the truth. A storm ignited in his eyes, and before Nate could act, Kane lunged for a hunting rifle he'd kept stashed by the door. What followed was a blur of shouts, the shattering of glass, Lily's screams echoing through the forest. In the chaos, Nate managed to subdue Kane with a tranquilizer dart hidden in his sleeve, a desperate move prepared with the help of a friend in crisis response. Kane collapsed, still whispering Lily's name, his hand outstretched toward her like a drowning man reaching for a lifeline. Lily stood frozen, tears streaming down her face as paramedics and officers arrived. She watched Kane being strapped to a stretcher, his eyes wild, his voice cracked. "Don't let them take you. We were happy here, Lily. We were happy." But she said nothing. There were no words left. Kane was admitted to a psychiatric facility under tight security, and Lily spent weeks in trauma therapy. Though the bruises healed, the scars remained. The town whispered about the scandal about the man once seen as charming and loyal, now broken and dangerous. Lily, however, did not speak publicly. She moved again, this time to New York, determined to start anew. But at night, she would sometimes dream of the cabin, the eerie quiet, the way Kane's eyes searched her soul, and the bitter truth that love, when twisted by fear and madness, could become its own prison. Still, she survived. And survival, after everything, was its own kind of victory. The days that followed Kane's detainment were a blur for Lily. Every conversation with a detective, every therapy session, every press inquiry felt like she was watching someone else live her life. It was as if her mind had distanced itself from her body, as if the trauma she'd endured had split her down the middle, one side functioning on autopilot, the other silently screaming. The cabin, though physically behind her, still haunted every quiet moment. She'd wake up from sleep drenched in sweat, hearing Kane's voice echo in her ears. "I've got you now, we're home." The walls of her new apartment in New York were painted a soft eggshell white, meant to soothe. But even in the calm, shadows seemed to crawl up from the corners. She double-checked every lock, kept curtains drawn, changed her name legally to Elle Winters, and took a job under an alias. The world had moved on, but inside, she hadn't. She learned from Nate that Kane had been declared mentally unfit for trial and committed to an intensive psychiatric facility in upstate Pennsylvania. That news twisted Lily's emotions into knots. Part of her felt relief he wouldn't roam free, wouldn't hurt anyone else. But another part of her, the part that still remembered the man who held her hand during childbirth, who made pancakes shaped like hearts on Valentine's Day, ached with a sadness she couldn't name. She didn't want vengeance. She wanted healing. But how could you heal when the person who broke you still believed they saved you? Despite her fears, Lily agreed to submit a formal victim statement to the court-appointed board overseeing Kane's rehabilitation. The statement, written over a sleepless week, wasn't just about the kidnapping. It was about the erosion of trust, the slow poison of control disguised as love, and the danger of unchecked obsession. She didn't write it to punish him. She wrote it so she could breathe again. But just as she began to find a fragile balance, her world tilted again. One night, while sitting in her apartment and editing a manuscript for a new author, a courier arrived at her door. She hadn't ordered anything. She hadn't told anyone her new address except Nate and her therapist. Suspicious, she peered through the peephole and saw a plain manila envelope being left at her door. No one stayed to deliver it. Her stomach churned. Every instinct screamed to throw it away, to burn it, to forget it. But curiosity, dread, and unresolved pain guided her hands. Inside was a single letter, written in Kane's unmistakable handwriting. My dearest Lily, I know you hate me. I know you think I'm a monster. But I want you to know I never stopped loving you. I can still smell your perfume on my skin. I dream of you every night. They say I'm sick. That I imagine things. But what if I wasn't wrong? What if WE were the only truth? If you still have a piece of your heart that remembers me, come. Just once. Let me explain. I swear I won't hurt you. I just want to look at you again. Room 317. Briarwood Facility. See. Lily dropped the letter as if it burned her. For hours, she paced. She told herself to ignore it. But as night stretched on, she couldn't escape the gnawing in her gut. Closure. Maybe that's what this was about. Not for him but for her. So she could stare into the eyes of the man who'd once held her hostage and say the words she never got to scream, "You don't own me." With Nate's reluctant blessing and a security escort arranged by a private firm, Lily traveled to Briarwood Facility 5 days later. The facility was gray and sterile, surrounded by fencing and motion detectors. Inside, the hallways felt cold despite the heater vents humming quietly. She waited behind glass, heart pounding, as they brought Kane in. He looked different. Thinner. Hair longer. But his eyes, those intense, dark eyes, hadn't changed. The moment he saw her, something raw and electric passed between them. Lily, he breathed, as if she were a ghost come to life. She sat down, carefully. You asked me here. I came. Say what you need to say. For a long moment, he just stared, as though absorbing the fact that she was real. I'm not going to say sorry, Kane said slowly. Not because I'm not sorry, but because sorry doesn't undo what I did. I know that. But I didn't bring you here for forgiveness. Lily's fingers tensed. Then why? Because I need you to understand my mind broke. I thought I was saving you. I thought if I just made everything quiet, you'd remember what we had. I was wrong. But Lily, in that cabin, for a few nights, I felt peace. Like the world outside couldn't ruin us anymore. Her eyes filled with tears, not out of love, but grief for what they had lost. You held me captive, Kane. You erased my freedom. That wasn't love. He nodded slowly. I know now. But back then, it felt like all I had. Lily stood to leave. I hope you get better, Kane. But I can't be your reason. I'm not yours to save anymore. He reached out toward the glass but didn't touch it. Even if I let you go, part of me will always be with you. She turned away without answering, her heart heavy. Closure, she realized, wasn't about getting answers. It was about walking away, no matter what was left unsaid. Months passed. The seasons changed. Spring rolled into summer, and Lily began to bloom again. She spoke at women's conferences about surviving emotional abuse and coercive control. She started a nonprofit with Nate, offering safe resources for women escaping obsessive relationships. Each day still had its echoes, but the volume of Kane's voice in her mind slowly faded. She smiled more, laughed with her children, took walks in Central Park without checking over her shoulder. And then, the call came. It was nearly midnight. Nate was the one to answer. His voice was tight, controlled. But Lily knew immediately, something had gone wrong. Kane escaped, Nate said, his words like ice. 3 hours ago. He overpowered a nurse and a guard. They don't know where he's headed, but they're assuming he'll come for you. The past came rushing back like a flood. The cabin. The silence. The silk scarves. Her heart thundered. Security was immediately deployed to her building. She was ushered into a panic room. But she knew Kane. If he wanted to reach her, he'd find a way. And he did. 2 nights later, Kane showed up not at her apartment but at her non-profit office. A security lapse had left the side entrance unmanned. He waited in her office chair, hands folded, eyes vacant. "I didn't come to hurt you," he said as she entered, startled, escorted by her assistant who fled in fear. Lily stepped back, reaching into her purse for the silent alarm. "You need help, Kane," she said calmly. "I don't need help," he replied. "I need peace. And the only way I get that is if you understand. I never wanted to trap you. I just didn't want to lose the only part of my life that felt like love." "You lost me long before the cabin," Lily whispered, her voice breaking. "You lost me the first time you chose control over trust." Sirens wailed in the distance. Police swarmed the building. Kane made no move to run. As he was handcuffed and led out, he looked over his shoulder one last time. "I'll let go," he said. "For real this time." And this time, Lily believed him. The court ordered Kane transferred to a maximum security mental health facility. He was declared permanently unfit for release without a unanimous board review, something that would likely never happen. Lily testified again, not out of hatred, but responsibility. She made sure her story was heard, not just for herself but for others who might fall into the same silent traps. Years passed. Lily flourished. She remarried slowly, carefully, to someone who valued freedom and consent above all. Her children thrived. She wrote a memoir, Captive Silence, which became a bestseller. And though she would never forget Kane, his love, his fall, his obsession, she didn't live in his shadow anymore. Because she had survived the impossible. Because she had chosen herself. Because she was free. The courtroom was silent when Lily stepped up to speak again. This wasn't the first time she'd faced Kane in a courtroom, but it felt different now, more final. She was older, stronger, and far more aware of the weight of her voice. Cameras weren't allowed inside the hearing, but she could feel the presence of reporters waiting outside, their pens sharpened like swords. Kane sat still behind a bulletproof barrier, clad in a prison orange uniform, shackled at the wrists and ankles. His face was thinner, more worn. His eyes, once electric with desperate love and obsession, were now dimmed by medication and time. "I'm not here to condemn you, Kane," Lily began softly, her voice echoing through the chamber. "I'm here to reclaim myself." She looked at him not with hatred, not even with anger, but with the kind of resolve that comes only from surviving hell. "I loved you once," she continued. "You were my partner. You were the father of our children. You were my safe place. Until you weren't. Until you became the person I feared the most. And even then, I didn't hate you. I pitied you. I grieved you. I hoped, foolishly, that the man I married would resurface. But the man I saw in that cabin, the man who caged me while whispering words of love that wasn't love, that was control. That was fear disguised as devotion." A few jurors shifted in their seats. One older woman blinked away tears. Kane didn't move. He barely blinked. "You say you've let go," Lily went on. "And I want to believe that. I really do. But your release would not just haunt me, it would endanger every woman who's ever left someone like you. So today, I ask this court, not out of vengeance, but out of justice, to keep him where he can do no harm. To me. To anyone." She stepped down. The judge nodded solemnly, recessed for deliberation, and an hour later, it was done. Kane Ashby was sentenced to indefinite psychiatric containment with no parole eligibility. That moment, though emotionless in formality, marked a turning point in Lily's life. Outside the courthouse, cameras flashed. Reporters called out her name. She didn't answer. She didn't need to. Her statement, simple, steady, and brutally honest, would be quoted in dozens of papers across the country. She would become, unknowingly, a symbol of resilience for survivors everywhere. Back in New York, Lily's nonprofit, her voice rising, received a surge of attention. Donations poured in. Celebrities reached out for interviews. Book publishers begged for a second memoir. But Lily, now practiced in the art of quiet survival, turned it all down. Instead, she spent time in nature. She painted. She taught writing workshops for women in recovery shelters. She built a new life not in defiance of her trauma, but alongside it like ivy growing around old stone. Her therapist, Dr. Murrin, once told her, healing isn't about erasing the past. It's about building something stronger on top of it. And Lily was doing just that. She maintained occasional contact with Nate, Devon, and her children, who were now in college, thriving and stable. They knew pieces of what had happened, but she had chosen not to burden them with every detail. One day, maybe, she'd tell them the full story. In the quiet hours of evening, Lily often sat by her window with tea and journaled, not just about what had happened, but who she was becoming. July 12th. Today I passed the bookstore window and saw my own face on the cover of a memoir. It was strange. I didn't feel proud or sad. Just real. Like the truth finally caught up with the world. I'm not a victim. I'm not a symbol. I'm just Lily. And I'm still here. And then, one day, she received a call she never expected. It was from a nurse at Briarwood. Not a warning, not a panic. A request. Ms. Winters, the woman said gently, Kane has asked to record a final statement. He's terminally ill. Pancreatic cancer. Stage 4. He only has weeks, maybe days. He insists it's not to manipulate or sway anything. He says he just needs you to hear it.